If you were to ask me what my favorite genre of gaming is of all time, I'd have to say farming sims. Because there's something just so comforting about them that I haven't managed to find in any other style of game. And some days I find that comfort in just being able to do the same tasks over and over. Other days I find the comfort of farming sims in forging friendships and relationships with all the characters that you get to meet. And sometimes you really just need a therapeutic trip to the mines where you can just, attack some monsters. But I honestly think the biggest reason I've fallen in love with farming sims is just a sense of belonging. Because no matter which farming sim you wind up playing, in all of them you essentially manage to find a new home and a new family. And sometimes you just really need that energy in your life. And considering we've been spoiled for choice with the amount of farming sims that have been releasing in the last couple of years, today I'm going to go through my top 10 farming sims of all time. Now for this list, I've decided to not include Stardew Valley, and that's mainly because we all know it, we all love it, and Stardew truly is the best of the best. And it's likely that you're coming to watch this video because you've already fallen in love with Stardew and are really looking for something else to just dive into and become obsessed with. And let's be honest, there's no game on this list which does Stardew Valley better than Stardew Valley does. So all of the games I'm going to share with you today are all unique in their own way. None of them tries to compete with Stardew Valley. They all just bring their unique take to what it means to be a farming sim. First up, we're going to start with one of my favorite indie games of all time, and that is Ooblets. This was the first game that I came across that showed me that farming sims could be so much more than Story of Seasons and Harvest Moon made me think they could be. Because in Ooblets, although you do the classic farming sim thing of moving to a brand new town, getting given a very rundown farm and house to start off in, and get told to farm in order to make money to upgrade your house and your tools, there's also a whole lot else to offer. Because Ooblets is also a creature collecting game. And not only are these creatures absolutely adorable, Ooblets also packs in a whole story for you to follow as well, which sees you go to different places on the island in order to restore their internet. And whilst you go, you get to meet all the wonderful characters, you get to take your Ooblets out and dance battle other people in order to try and win. And if you don't want to battle with your adorable Ooblets, you can set them to work on your farm as well. I think one of the reasons I fell in love with Ooblets is it gives such a good purpose to farming that isn't just necessarily making money. Because as you run around the world, you'll realize that in order to challenge a wild Ooblet to a dance battle, you must first feed it its favorite food. And it's not long before you realize that foraging is not going to be enough for you to be able to do this. And instead you turn to planting different things in your farm in order to keep the Ooblets fed and happy. And hopefully that will allow you to catch brand new Ooblets and even shiny, or as they call them, gleamy versions as well. I also think Ooblets need a bit better of a diet. You see, when you win a dance battle against them, they will effectively poop out a seed for you to go plant that will grow your very own Ooblet of that kind. The thing is, they really do strain a lot to do that. And on the days where you're looking for a farming sim that has a little bit more direction, Ooblets is a great game to turn to, as there's always different story quests for you to go on, or things to complete for different characters around each of the towns that you get to visit, meaning that there's always something for you to do, and you don't have to just make your own fun. So if you're looking for a farming sim with a heck of a lot of character, this might be the perfect one to go and pick up. Next, let's go to a more classical farming sim, and that is Coral Island. I think the thing that makes Coral Island so good is the fact that it's just getting better. Every single time I pick up the game and I play it, I think, wow, this is such a fantastic farming sim. And then I go and look on the Discord and find out that another massive update is on the way. Coral Island is much more of a traditional-like farming sim, and I'd go as far as to say this is probably the most Stardew-like farming sim on the entire list, as it definitely has a very similar vibe. Once again, this will see you move to a brand new island and start a brand new life in this beautiful Indonesian-inspired Coral Island. Now, first of all, one of the big things that sets this apart from every other game I've seen is just how big the island is. But despite its size, it somehow doesn't feel empty whatsoever. Each area has plenty of different things to go and explore, with the island only getting bigger and better as you unlock more of the story. But the thing that really brings this to life is the the NPCs, because not only is there a lot of them and a lot of dateable characters as well, each of the characters are fully fleshed out and written wonderfully, and this really brings this town to life. Now, I think for me, the thing that makes this kind of Stardew Valley-like is not only kind of the very classical farming sim gameplay loop, but also the story as well, as this follows the island trying to battle against being acquired by a huge corporation. And this particular oil corporation has been leaking oil into the local waters and affecting all of the local wildlife. And these issues have even caused the local spirits to call upon you to try and help. And in order to try and save the town from being taken over, you need to increase the town's rank, which you can do in a number of different ways. So first up, you have the more classical ways of doing this, which is going and completing each of the different bundle sets. You can also go and try and complete the mines as well, but there's also a few things that really set this game apart. The biggest of which to me is the ability to go and help clean up the coral under the sea. And this unlocks a big new aspect of gameplay that not only sees you bob along the bottom of the ocean, picking up all the trash and getting rid of the oil as you go, but also the ability to meet mer people. And I know there's mermaids in Stardew Valley, but in Coral Island you can date the mer people, so I definitely think that's what sets it apart. You also have a museum which you can go and fill with anything that you find, from trinkets that you pick up from the bottom of the ocean to fish, bugs, dinosaur fossils, and so much more. But I knew Coral Island was a special game from the moment I went to the very first festival, as these are truly when the town comes to life. Now, I know festivals aren't anything new in a farming sim game, but Coral Island just does them bigger and better than anyone else. As not only are they really pretty, they're also packed with mini games to play as well, meaning that I was always looking forward to the next one. And thanks to the most recent update, Coral Island is more or less a finished game, with the main storyline now being complete for you to go and enjoy, and the ability to farm both underwater with the merfolk, but also a brand new savanna area as well, giving you new scavengeables and new animals to take care of. And whilst Coral Island doesn't necessarily do anything massive to revolutionize the farming sim genre, it does everything that it does incredibly well, and that's what makes it a pleasure to play. Next, we're going to talk about one of my favorite games of all time, but before we do that, I just want to thank today's sponsor, FlexiSpot. Now, as a gamer, I spend a lot of my time sat down and at my desk, and I was finding that I was getting really bad back pain when I sat down too long. And that's mainly because the chair that I was using didn't have any inbuilt back support. So that's when I decided to switch to FlexiSpot, as not only does it have this inbuilt back support that is also adjustable, it's come with so many other things that's just made my gaming so much more comfortable. Like, for example, the summer is coming up, and I love the fact that this chair is so breathable compared to my previous one. But you're also able to adjust every element of it, with there being an adjustable headrest, adjustable armrests. You can also adjust the height, the seat tilt, and the seat depth. And I love the fact that this chair has taken into account every different way there is to game. Like, you can relax and lie back, you can sit up in it like normal, or if you're someone like me who likes to hunch over on their desk a little bit, there's also the ability to adjust the backrest in order to help support you even in that position. And the best part is, if you like the look of this chair, then the C7 comes in a range of colors as well to pick from. So if you want to check out the C7 FlexiSpot chair, click the link in my description down below. Next up, let's talk about wildflowers. There is not a single farming sim that's released that is anything like wildflowers, as this does one big thing to make it stand out among the rest, and that is that it has a fully voice-acted story. And although at first it felt a little bit weird to be playing a farming sim as a set character instead of as yourself, it turned out to be one of the biggest strengths of Wildflowers. In this, you play as Tara, who, after being dumped and losing her job, decides to move to the town of Fairhaven to look after her sick grandma. And while she's there, she sees this as a new beginning and a new start to her life. But don't worry, this isn't your normal farming sim, as it's not long before she realizes that not only is there a full coven of witches living on this island, but that her gran is a part of it and that she's a witch too. And there's so much that sets Wildflowers apart from other farming sims. And it's not just the fact that your grandmother is still alive when you move in and take over her farm. First of all, everything that you can do to look after your farm is aided by magic. There's magic spells that you can use, there's also potions that you can brew, and once you get far enough, there's even magical contraptions that can fully help out your farm as well. And to top it all off, there's also magical animals, which depending on which season you breed them in, will come out a whole host of different magical colours. But the real strength of Wildflowers is actually in its characters. I didn't realise what a difference voice acting would make until I played Wildflowers, and I realised that it brings each of the characters to life in a way that reading it in your own voice can't always manage. I'm not normally one who tends to get married in farming sims. I'm not really too interested in the relationship or friendship mechanics, but in Wildflowers I wound up getting married. And not only that, I also made friends with so many of the characters in the towns as well. And although it took me 60 or so hours to finish the main story, I am by no means done with the game. There's a ton of different quests, side stories, and also things to do with the other characters that could keep you playing this for well over 100 hours. And although this is sometimes a little bit clumsy in its farming sim mechanics, everything else about this game makes this one of my favourite farming sims of all time. Then we have Fae Farm, which is the complete opposite of Wildflowers. Fae Farm's biggest weakness is definitely the dialogue and its characters, but where Fae Farm truly excels is actually in the farming sim mechanics. Now, for the longest time, I just accepted that some aspects of farming sims were going to feel a little bit chore-like, because some of the mechanics in farming sims inherently always just felt a little bit awkward. Like, for example, the way you have to keep on continually changing tools whenever you want to do things, always feeling a little bit clunky and a little bit clumsy. And although Fae Farm most definitely isn't perfect, one of the things it really did do is streamline the farming sim mechanics. And honestly, it's made it really hard to go from playing Fae Farm to other farming sims, because what it's done is pure magic. Now, Fae Farm does sort of have a story. It sees you be washed up on this island filled with Fae creatures, and it somehow becomes your job in order to clean up the land and help out all of the villagers. So this will see you do your classic farming sim stuff of farming, looking after animals, but also going down into the mines. And with multiple different farms to look after, each of which excelling in a different part of farming, there's definitely more than enough to keep you busy. The biggest thing Fae Farm did was just make the farming feel easy. Like, for example, it starts you off with unlimited storage that automatically sorts itself. So you don't have to worry about things like chest management, which honestly is my nightmare in a farming sim. You also don't have to worry so much about changing tools, as it will do that automatically. You also get to use spells to enhance your farming as well, allowing you to do things like water and harvest multiple crops at the same time pretty early on. The game also doesn't have a huge focus on money, so you don't constantly feel like you're on the money grind, but instead it's all about resources, which you need to process and turn into different things. To me, this also has some of the best combat that I've seen in a farming sim before. It's much more RPG-like and a bit less, clunky farming simmy. And this also had a really big focus on flower breeding, which turned out to be something I really enjoyed. So although the dialogue in this is very lackluster, and so is the story, the actual farming sim loop and mechanics I found to be really enjoyable. So for me, this is the perfect farming sim to play when I don't want to have to keep up with the story or care too much about the characters, and I just want to do the gameplay mechanics of a farming sim without needing to do anything else. Next up is a truly unique farming sim, and that is Roots of Patcha. Now this stands out for a couple of reasons. I think the biggest one though is this has absolutely no combat. And for that reason, it just makes it a lot more chill than other farming sim games are, and something that I picked up pretty often when I didn't want to have to deal with battling anyone. The other thing that makes it stand out compared to all of the rest is the fact that this is a prehistoric farming sim. So you start off the game with nothing but a rock, living in a shared tent with all of the other villagers. But as the game progresses and you explore further and you progress in your farming, people will approach you and come up with different ideas to try and help you. And this was by far one of my favorite aspects about the entire game. Sometimes these inventions will be able to help you and your farming abilities, like coming up with brand new tools for you to use instead of just a pointy rock. But other times you'll need to give them a whole host of different resources, as this upgrade will actually affect the entire town and not just you. Like some of the early inventions include inventing a clock so you'll be able to tell the time, and the idea to place torches all around the town so you can see your way around even at night. And this means not only do you personally progress as time goes on with your farm getting bigger and better and learning brand new skills like animal care, you also get to see the entire town transform over time as well. Now, although Roots of Patcha doesn't have any combat, it most definitely still has mines. Only this time you have to run around and solve different puzzles in order to progress. And I really enjoyed this slightly different take on mines in a farming sim. But don't worry, there's a lot of classical farming sim elements in this as well, including relationship mechanics, bundles for you to go and complete, and even neighboring clans to go and befriend. I love the fact that this farming sim isn't just about you making your life better. Although your farm does get bigger, you also help out everyone in your town. They come up with new inventions, the town gets bigger and better as well, and you can see it transform from you just having one pointy rock to do everything with, to you being set with tools, and your town just looking more modern and bigger and better. And to me, I feel like this is such an underrated farming sim. It has everything I know and love, but is also just so different. Speaking of being so different, let's talk about Harvestella. Now, this is definitely not a farming sim for everyone, but it is a farming sim that I love and I adore, because this has something many farming sims don't, and that is a fantastic story. Now, Harvestella is actually part farming sim, part RPG. And it's surprising how much these two genres actually complement each other. So the RPG elements in Harvestella give the farming a purpose. You need to make food in order to sell it so you can get money, but also use it to cook so you have food to eat when you're out fighting and doing boss fights in order to recoup your HP so you actually make it through the battle. But this also enhances the RPG elements as well, as in Harvestella, you have a home to return to after a hard day of battle. And this small addition of a place to call home, having to travel between your home and wherever the objective is happening, and the day and night cycle, just add a little bit of realism to this RPG. And although the farming sim mechanics in Harvestella are pretty standard, you have seasonal crops which you need to water each and every day, you can have different animals to take care of as well, and a kitchen to go cook all of your food in. And although there's no voice acting or big cutscenes really, this story is actually incredibly good. And although it's slow to start, once I got into it, I was absolutely hooked. The story sees you randomly wake up in a small town with no memories of who you are or what you're doing there. But all you know is that you've arrived during what they call Quietus, otherwise known as the Season of Death. And during this moment, everything that's outside and touches it will die. But the issue is, the Season of Death is getting longer every time it rolls around, and it's starting to really become a problem for its people. So of course it becomes your job to set out and try and discover why this is happening and what's causing it. And this journey will take you across multiple breathtaking towns, although admittedly more breathtaking on the PC than the Switch. And also see you meet a whole host of different characters, each of which are wonderfully written. After the first couple of hours of playing this, I wasn't sure this was the game for me. But after I got past the tutorial section, I thought this was absolutely incredible. And although the combat could be a little tricky at times, and I really wish that they had an easy option so you could just enjoy the farming sim mechanics and the story and not worry too much about the combat, if you're up for tackling the RPG-like combat, then the story is well worth it. And I love the way farming intertwines all of it and brings it all together. Speaking about farming sims with fantastic stories, let's talk about my time at Sandrock. Now, although this had a bit of a rocky launch on the Nintendo Switch, I'm happy to say right now it's in a fantastic place. And unlike Harvestella, this main storyline has full-on cutscenes and is fully voice acted, not just in the cutscenes, but also outside of them as well. And this is another one of those games where although you can farm, it's not necessarily the main mechanic, as this has more of an emphasis on the crafting side of things than necessarily the farming. So this is all about collecting the resources, processing them in the right machines, and then turning them into the final product. But although the focus is less on the farming, it still has a very farming sim-like vibe to the whole gameplay. And collecting the resources you need can be anything from farming to foraging outside, or to going to these mine-like areas to collect loads of different minerals and ores. But the strength of Sandrock comes from its characters and also its story. As the beginning of the game sees you rock up at a brand new town, starting a brand new job as a builder. And it's your job to try and get this rundown town back on its feet. There's honestly so much that makes my time at Sandrock special, and I love the fact that they're coming out with constant updates and DLC to keep the game fresh. And this is one of those games where you're definitely going to get your money's worth, as the main story can take upwards of 80 hours to complete. And honestly, it's a really good story as well. And this is a game with plenty to do. There's an open world to explore, you have your very own workshop, which you can build different machines on, add buildings to your house to make it bigger as well. There's also plenty of NPCs to interact with, each with their own stories, so you get to learn all about them, and even a bunch of mini games to get to grips with as well. This is a great farming sim if you like direction. There's so many quests to be done, not just main story quests, but side quests as well, meaning that you never really need to make your own fun, but also you can take it at your very own pace. So if you do just want to decorate your house for a day or two, you could do that as well with no penalty. Then we have Moonstone Island. This is one of my favorite games that has come out this year, and I love the fact that farming, again, has a purpose. This sees you fly off away from home to start your 1-year apprenticeship as an alchemist. And after crash landing on a random island, you find a town full of people that are in need of your help. And much like many of the other games on this list, Moonstone Island isn't just a farming sim, but it's also, again, a creature collecting one. But unlike the likes of Ooblets, this is less about a story and more about exploration, as there's 100 procedurally generated islands, each filled with secrets, treasure, and monsters to tame and collect. And although Moonstone Island has such a mix of gameplay mechanics, with Pokemon like creature collecting, card-based battling, but also Stardew-like life sim and farming sim mechanics, along with old school like Zelda dungeons, somehow this all comes together in a beautiful mesh of gameplay. And again, farming isn't necessarily the main focus, but it is really useful to enhance your gameplay. Like for example, if you want to befriend an animal, you'll need to feed it, and you can make that food on your farm. There's also farming mechanics when it comes to all your different spirits that you catch as well, as you can house them in a barn, and when you feed them, they'll give you different resources, meaning that there's elements of caring for the creatures and not just using them in battle. Definitely one of my favorite games of the year and can't recommend it enough. Now, if you're looking for another magical, classical farming sim, then that's where Sunhaven comes in. Now, this scale of the game is absolutely ludicrous. This game is massive, and this might be one of the reasons why it's taking so unbelievably long to come to the Nintendo Switch. But Sunhaven, again, is another magical-like farming sim that sees you rock up to a brand new town and start your very own farm. And again, you can use your very own magical abilities to enhance your farming. But the thing that really sets Sunhaven apart is just the scale of it. Not only is your starting town absolutely massive and filled with NPCs to befriend, there's also multiple different towns that you can go to, with each with their own mines for you to go and explore. You'll also be able to open brand new farms around each of the new towns that you find. And throughout all of this, you have the main story, which you'll be trying to progress as you go as well. And the game is magical from start to finish. You can pick which magical creature you want to begin as, each with their own benefits and attributes depending on who you pick. And there's also a massive skill tree as well, allowing you to really decide what you want to become good at. It's another farming sim where you're never going to feel lost as to what to do, be it main story quests or simply helping out people in the town. And Sunhaven does each of the elements of a farming sim so wonderfully. The combat is a lot of fun to do, especially with the magic. There's plenty to explore and see, and the farming is just what you know and love from your likes of Stardew Valley. I genuinely can't wait for this to come to the Nintendo Switch. I feel like I've been waiting years for it because I have been waiting years for it, but it truly is something special, and again, a game that keeps on being updated and more being added to it, so it's only getting better. And last up, we have Story of Seasons. Now, my favourite standard Story of Seasons game has to be Story of Seasons Friends of Mineral Town. This is a fantastic beginner farming sim. It explains things really well, and I think this is great for someone who's very new to the franchise. And don't get me wrong, I liked Story of Seasons A Wonderful Life, but if you're like me and you don't have any nostalgia towards the series, it got a little bit slow and sometimes a little bit boring. But my absolute favourite Story of Seasons game of all time is Story of Seasons Doraemon. Specifically, for me, the second game. And the reason I'm so in love with it is it's just something a little bit different. Because you play as the Doraemon characters and not necessarily as yourself, this gave them the ability to give this farming sim a really good story with proper cutscenes as well. And because you're playing as a kid, there isn't a focus on you having a relationship, but instead it's on helping other people in the town with their relationships, which I actually enjoyed a lot more. But this had something a lot of Story of Seasons games sometimes lack, which is NPCs with a whole lot of character. And of course, because this is a franchise that birthed farming sims, the farming sim mechanics are equally as solid as all of the other games. And in this, you play as Nobi, who arrive on a strange planet where they meet a young boy. And they decide to live together with him on his farm to try and make his dream of bringing it back to its former glory a reality. There's something about the writing and the art style that's made this so special and always stand out to me as the best of Story of Seasons, and I really hope they take some inspiration from this in their upcoming games. That's it for my favourite farming sims, but if you want to see some cozy games I'm really looking forward to, then click this video here.